Hello, everyone. Welcome to Learn English podcast.
My First Love. Learn English through story.
My First Love is a story that begins not with fireworks, not with something extraordinary, but with the soft unfolding of ordinary days that slowly became special, because when I was a young woman stepping into the world with hope in my heart, love was something I dreamed about but never truly understood, and when it finally arrived, it came like sunlight breaking into my life, unexpected but warm, and it changed the way I looked at myself, at people, and at the future. And so today, I want to tell you this story in simple English, not because it is just about me, but because it carries feelings and lessons that every young person can relate to. And maybe as you listen, you will not only improve your English, but also remember your own first love, because first love has a special place in the heart. It is both sweet and painful, both innocent and unforgettable, and once it touches your life, it never really leaves you. And for me, it started during the last year of high school, when I was 18, full of dreams but also doubts, living in a small town where nothing extraordinary ever seemed to happen, where the days were long, the nights were quiet, and the future felt like a faraway horizon. And yet, in that quiet town, my heart discovered something that books could not teach and classes could not explain, something that would mark me forever. And his name was Daniel, a boy who at first seemed like any other boy, someone I had seen around but never paid much attention to, until one afternoon when fate decided to turn our ordinary paths into something extraordinary, because love often begins in the most unexpected places, and for me, it was in the library of our school, a place I used to visit often not only to study, but to escape the noise of the hallways. And I still remember that day so clearly, the way the sun came through the tall windows, making the dust in the air look like tiny golden stars, and I was sitting at a table near the window trying to finish an essay for English class, when suddenly I heard a voice asking if the seat across from me was taken, and when I looked up, it was him, Daniel, smiling politely, holding a book in his hand, and for some reason, my heart skipped a beat, though I didn't understand why, and I nodded shyly, saying yes, he could sit, and that was the beginning, though I didn't know it then, of the story that would later become my first love. At first, we didn't speak much, just a few polite words about school, about the books we were reading, about the teachers we liked and the ones we didn't, but slowly those short conversations grew into longer ones, and soon I found myself looking forward to afternoons in the library, not because of the silence, but because of the possibility that he might be there. And sometimes he was, sometimes he wasn't, but every time he appeared, my heart seemed to light up in a way I had never experienced before, and it confused me, because I had always thought love was something dramatic, something that would sweep me off my feet like in the movies. But with Daniel, it was different. It was gentle. It was like discovering a song you didn't know you needed until you heard it, and once you heard it, you wanted to play it again and again. And I noticed things I hadn't before. The way he tapped his fingers when he was thinking, the way his hair fell over his forehead when he bent over his books, the way his laughter made even the librarian smile. And I realized that the smallest details could suddenly become the most beautiful when you were looking at them with your heart. And as the weeks went by, we became friends, walking together after school, sharing snacks, telling stories about our families, our childhood, our dreams. And though we never called it love, though neither of us said anything beyond friendship, I felt it growing inside me, like a secret garden that only I could see. And at night, I would lie awake, replaying our conversations, wondering if he felt the same, wondering if one day he might look at me the way I secretly looked at him. And in those moments, I understood why people said that first love is powerful, because it is not only about the other person, it is about how it awakens something inside you, something new, something pure. And even though it scared me, it also made me feel alive. One day, near the end of winter, something happened that brought us closer, and it was so small, yet it meant everything to me, because I had forgotten my umbrella, and as I stood outside the school watching the rain pour down, feeling frustrated because I would get soaked walking home, Daniel appeared beside me holding his umbrella, and without hesitation he said, "Come on, let's walk together." And I will never forget that moment, the sound of the rain tapping against the umbrella, the closeness of his shoulder next to mine, and how our steps matched as we walked down the familiar streets, and how my heart pounded so loudly I was afraid he might hear it, And yet he acted so natural, telling me jokes, making me laugh. And in that ordinary walk home under the gray sky, I felt something extraordinary. I felt safe. I felt happy. I felt like the world had given me a gift. And I knew then that what I was feeling was love, even if I was too shy to say it out loud. And from that day on, every moment with him seemed brighter, every conversation seemed deeper, every smile seemed more important. And I found myself writing his name in the margins of my notebooks, daydreaming about him during class, and realizing that love was not something you planned, it was something that simply happened. And once it started, it was impossible to ignore. As spring arrived and the days grew warmer, my friendship with Daniel deepened, and with every passing week I felt myself falling more and more into the quiet magic of first love, and yet I kept my feelings hidden, unsure if he felt the same, unsure if I was just a friend in his eyes, but in my heart, everything he did carried meaning. Every time he remembered something small I had said, every time he smiled when he saw me, every time he chose to walk beside me instead of with his other friends, and I told myself not to read too much into it, but love has a way of making ordinary gestures feel extraordinary. And so I cherished every little moment, even if it was just sitting together in the library or sharing a packet of chips on the way home, because in those small things I found happiness. And one afternoon, when the cherry blossoms were blooming along the streets near our school, he asked if I wanted to take a longer walk before heading home, and I agreed immediately, my heart leaping with excitement, though I tried to stay calm. And we wandered through the park, watching the petals fall like soft pink snow, and we talked about our dreams for the future, about what we wanted to do after graduation, and I confessed shyly that I wanted to study literature, because stories had always been my escape, my way of understanding the world, and he smiled and said he thought that was perfect for me, because he believed I had a way with words, and hearing him say that made my cheeks burn with happiness. And when I asked about his dream, he told me he wanted to travel, to see the world, to take photographs of places most people never get to see. And the way his eyes shone as he spoke made me realize how much passion he carried inside him, and I admired him even more. And in that moment, under the blossoms, listening to him speak about the future, I felt both inspired and scared, because I wanted to be part of his future, but I didn't know if I would be, and that uncertainty made my heart ache even while it was soaring.
The more time we spent together, the more I began to notice that others around us also noticed. My classmates would tease me gently, asking if Daniel and I were a couple, and though I always denied it with a laugh, inside I wished it were true. And sometimes I caught him glancing at me in ways that made me wonder if he wished the same. But neither of us said anything directly. Perhaps because we were both young, both unsure, both afraid of breaking the beautiful balance of our friendship. But first love does not need words to exist. It breathes in the spaces between conversations. It lingers in the silence when eyes meet. It grows quietly, patiently, until one day it can no longer be contained. And I felt that day was coming closer, though I did not know when or how. And then one evening, after a long day of studying for exams, he walked me home. And when we reached my gate, instead of saying goodbye, he hesitated, looking at me with an expression I couldn't read. And then finally he spoke, saying, "I don't know what the future holds, but I want you to know that these months with you have been the best part of my life." And my heart nearly burst hearing those words because they echoed my own feelings. But again, my fear held me back, and I only whispered, "Thank you," smiling though tears stung my eyes. And when he walked away into the fading light, I realized that love is sometimes as much about what is unsaid as what is spoken. And though my lips remained silent, my heart screamed the truth. I loved him, and I would always remember this as my first love, no matter where life took us. As the final weeks of school passed, I found myself living in a strange mixture of joy and sadness, because every day with Daniel felt more precious, but every sunset brought me closer to the moment when our lives might separate. And though I tried to focus on the happiness of the present, my heart could not ignore the shadow of goodbye waiting at the edge of my thoughts. And so I began to treasure the simplest things even more. The way he carried my books without asking, the way he laughed at his own silly jokes, the way he looked at the world with curiosity, as if every corner of life held something worth discovering. And the way he always listens to me, truly listened, in a way that made me feel seen. And I often wondered if he realized how rare that was, how rare he was, and how deeply he had changed me. Because before meeting him, I was shy, uncertain, too afraid to speak up. But with him, I felt braver, as if his belief in me had awakened something inside I didn't know existed. And I thought to myself that even if we never ended up together, even if I never confessed my love, he had already given me a gift that would last a lifetime, the gift of confidence, the gift of knowing I was worth something. And yet, as much as I tried to comfort myself with that thought, my heart still longed for one chance to tell him how I felt, and maybe, just maybe, to hear that he felt the same. The day of graduation arrived with a sky that seemed too bright, too full of promise and farewell, and I woke up with a heart that raced faster than it ever had, because this was the day everything would change, the day childhood ended and adulthood began. And as I put on my uniform one last time, smoothing the wrinkles, tying my hair carefully, I thought about all the mornings before this one, all the ordinary days that had brought me here, and how extraordinary they had become simply because of his presence. And when I arrived at school, the courtyard was already alive with laughter and tears, friends taking photos, teachers giving speeches, parents waiting proudly. And among the crowd, my eyes searched only for him. And when I finally saw him, standing with his friends near the old oak tree, my heart gave a leap because he looked just as he always did, yet somehow different too, more grown, more distant, as if the future had already begun to claim him. And when his eyes met mine, he smiled, the same warm smile that had melted me the first time. And I felt tears sting my eyes, even though I told myself not to cry. Not today, not yet. And the ceremony passed in a blur of applause, names being called, caps tossed into the air. But my mind was only half there, because the other half was consumed with the thought of what would happen after, of whether I would have the courage to speak, or whether my silence would follow me into the future, becoming a regret I carried forever. And when it was over, when the crowd scattered into hugs and promises, I found myself standing beside him, just the two of us in the corner of the field. And he looked at me with that expression I'd seen once before, that expression of hesitation mixed with longing. And I thought, this is the moment. This is the time. And I opened my mouth to speak, but before I could, he said softly, "I'm leaving tomorrow." And the words struck me like thunder, because though I'd known he dreamed of traveling, though I'd known change was coming, I hadn't expected it to be so soon. And my voice shook as I asked him where. And he told me he had been accepted into a program abroad, an opportunity he couldn't refuse. And I wanted to smile for him, to be proud, to show only joy. But inside my heart was breaking, because tomorrow meant no more walks home together, no more afternoons in the library, no more cherry blossoms falling between us. And the silence stretched so long between us that I feared he would walk away without another word. But then he reached into his pocket and handed me a small notebook, plain on the outside, worn at the edges, and he said, "I want you to have this. It's full of the little sketches and notes I've made these past months. I thought you might like it because you love stories, and maybe one day when you write yours, you can remember ours." And my hands trembled as I took it because it was the most thoughtful, most personal gift I'd ever received. And I wanted so badly to tell him right there, to say the words that burned in my chest. But all that came out was a whisper, "Thank you." And he smiled gently, as if he understood everything I could not say. And then, just like that, the moment passed, and he was called away by his friends. And I stood alone, clutching the notebook to my chest, knowing that love had slipped quietly into the space between us, beautiful and unfinished.
That night, I lay awake for hours, staring at the ceiling, the notebook resting on my pillow, and I flipped through its pages again and again, each sketch a window into his mind, each line of writing a reminder of how deeply he had cared, even if he had never said the words aloud. And I thought about how tomorrow he would be gone, and I might never have another chance. and the fear of regret filled me so strongly that I almost wrote him a letter, almost called him on the phone, almost told him everything in one rush of courage. But each time I tried, doubt silenced me, whispering that perhaps he did not feel the same, that perhaps it was better to keep our friendship unbroken than to risk losing it with a confession. And so I fell asleep with unshed tears. And when morning came, I dressed quickly and hurried to the station, because I could not let him leave without seeing him one last time, without at least saying goodbye. And when I arrived, he was already there with his suitcase, standing on the platform, looking both excited and nervous. And when he saw me, surprise lit his face, followed by a smile that warmed me even in the cool morning air. And I ran up to him, breathless, heart pounding, and for a moment we just stood there, neither speaking, both knowing this was the end of something we had never fully begun. And finally I managed to say, "I'll miss you." And he looked at me for a long time before replying, "I'll miss you too, more than you know." And those words were enough to carry me through the years that followed, even though the train arrived too soon and he stepped onto it, waving as the doors closed, and I stood there on the platform until the train disappeared from sight, clutching the notebook to my chest, whispering the words I had never said aloud, words that belonged to him, though he would never hear them. "I love you." Years passed, as they always do, and though life carried me forward into university, into new friendships, into new cities with their busy streets and endless possibilities, a part of me always remained on that platform, watching the train disappear into the horizon, because first love has a way of planting itself in the deepest corner of your memory, not to hold you back, but to remind you of who you were when you first discovered the extraordinary power of feeling something so pure. And though time softened the sharpness of goodbye, it never erased the warmth of what Daniel and I shared. And often, late at night when the world was quiet, I would open his notebook, running my fingers over the sketches, reading his words until I could almost hear his voice again. And I realized that first love is not about how long it lasts or whether it becomes a lifelong story. It is about how it transforms you, how it teaches you to see yourself and the world differently. And in that sense, my first love was not a loss, but a gift, because it gave me courage, it gave me tenderness, it gave me memories so vivid that even now, years later, they make me smile. And I began to understand that not all stories are meant to have perfect endings. Some are meant to remain unfinished, glowing softly in the past, shaping who we become without needing to continue in the present. I did meet other people. I did laugh and dream and even love again. But each time I carried with me the quiet wisdom that first love had given me, the knowledge that love is not only about possession or promises, but about presence, about seeing someone truly and being seen in return, about the way a single person's belief in you can change the way you believe in yourself. And I carried that lesson into my studies, into my writing, into every new chapter of my life, because Daniel had once told me that love was when someone made you feel you were not alone. And those words stayed with me, echoing across the years, reminding me to be that kind of presence for others, reminding me to believe in myself even when doubt whispered otherwise. And so when I think back on my first love, I do not think of it with regret, but with gratitude, because it was not a story of what might have been, but a story of what was, a beautiful, fleeting season that bloomed like cherry blossoms and then drifted away, leaving behind not emptiness, but petals of memory, that I still carry in my heart. And maybe one day, if our paths cross again in some distant city, I will finally say the words I never said. Or maybe I will keep them as mine alone, a secret treasure of my youth, and that will be enough, because my first love will always be part of me, a gentle reminder that love in any form, however brief, is worth remembering, worth cherishing, worth telling as a story for others to learn. And so I tell it now, not only as my memory, but as a lesson, that love is not only about endings, but about beginnings, about who we become when we dare to feel. And that is why, even if you are young and uncertain, even if your heart is afraid of breaking, do not be afraid of love, because it will teach you more than fear ever could. It will shape you, guide you, and give you the courage to keep walking forward, carrying with you the quiet strength of having loved and having been loved, even once, even in silence, even if it was your first and not your last, because first love, no matter how it ends, never truly leaves you. It lives on in the person you become, and that is the story I will carry forever.